Someone says, "What's the future?" Vaughn Coleman.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to yet another episode of Vaughn Coleman Presents. This is the fourth one in the last few days. It's been a marathon, but it's been good. Every single guest has been great. But before I bring in this guest, I do want to make sure that I have shown off my book first. So let me go ahead and do that. So we are actually less than $500 away from getting my first stretch goal for Phenomenova issue 1. Let me go ahead and pull that right here. So Phenomenova issue 1, which, by the way, I just had the guest who did this cover, Buzz, last night. So make sure you check that interview out if you haven't already. And also make sure you back the book if you haven't already, because once we hit 15,000 across all three of these campaigns, we will get this exclusive free mini print that's going to be a 5/9 mini print of this artwork right here. So make sure you back that. But what is the book about? Well, for those of you that don't know, Phenomenova follows the idealistic son of a World War III veteran who is struck by lightning while holding a mysterious crystal, and he finds himself awakening with lightning powers and lightning speed, and decides he wants to use those powers to become a superhero. But he finds himself in way over his head when he attempts to intervene at a heist at a nuclear reactor. So if that sounds interesting to you, definitely check it out. In an age of deconstruction and cynicism, I wanted an uplifting tale that harkens back to the comics that drew us here in the first place. So make sure you check that out. But enough about me. Without further ado, let's bring in our guest, Jesse Blaze Snider. How's it going?
Going good, man. That looks great. I really like the that print is beautiful.
Oh my God. It's so, I mean, obviously I like it a lot. I have it on my background, which that's one of the things about double page spreads. Obviously you'll notice in the thumbnail, I've used one from your book, is even though as writers, we like to, put a lot on the pages. It's so good for promotion and just graphic design, just having a good double page spread.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, the pacing of a comic book is so important. The people making comics right now aren't real comic fans, so they don't utilize the medium to its highest level, and it's not hitting like it can. And the biggest way you do that is with the page turns and with fractioning. From a double page spread, that is the least panels you can have.
Right.
To a single page spread, to half a page spread, to quarter, to a really busy page, and playing with that as a writer, and when you make your comics and you build your things as the story goes, that's so important.
And it's hard too. I'm so glad I have this shelf, because I went from a screenwriting background, but I always say you got to learn the medium that you're writing in. There's things you could do in a book you can't do in a comic. There's things you could do in a screenplay you can't do in a comic. There's things you do in a comic. Everything has its own special stuff. So it took a while to learn the medium, and that's why I kept revising, because I felt like I wasn't maximizing the medium.
The page turn thing is really it. Because what it really comes down to, like good food for your brain, right? When you read a book, right, and it starts to get exciting, and you're like, wow, and you turn the page, you're just getting to more things that you have to read until you might have something happen.
Yeah.
When you watch a movie and something's getting exciting, the movie makes it exciting for you.
Right.
In a comic book, when something's getting exciting, if the person who understands the medium has created it for you, the exciting part is on the next page. And a reader's control over giving themselves the shock, the excitement, makes comic books the best medium there is.
Yeah.
There is control that the audience has with the experience, and that's the difference. But this is why it behooves every creative person who makes comics to be very audience oriented, because if you're not thinking about what the audience experience is going to be, you're not going to make good comics.
I'm in agreement with you. I mean, I think it's one of the things where I came from the film background, and coming to this, it's like it really I fell in love with the medium. It starts out, yeah, it's more economic than film, but that's only the truth is this medium. I mean, I was just thinking when you said that, there were moments I specifically remember turning the page to, oh my God, it's an
Yeah, I was thinking of the time I turned the page and the Century ripped Ares in half after I had just finished reading this miniseries about Ares written by Michael Avon Oeming, which was one of my favorite things I'd read in a long time, and I was in love with Ares. And I turned the page, and I was not prepared to see the Century, who was a favorite character of mine, who Brian Michael Bendis ruined, but just ripped one of my other favorite characters in half. It's the most shocking moment of my life, and because I turned the page,
it's like you did it.
Yeah, I did it. I did it to myself. Look at
Yeah.
It's real. It really. There's something about that. There's something about reading a book that has that, and that's why people are like, no, reading the book is always better. But there's something about reading the comic that immediate that you can be shocked, like when the creative people are really doing their job. It's always better. It's a better experience because you get that immediate result like you do in a movie or a TV show, but you're involved in the process, and it changes the experience in such a wonderful way.
I think another thing too that I liked about it is, and I think it's true with books too, is it makes you imagine certain things. Like, for example, in a film, if someone walks over to something, you do it. But in a comic, like it'll show, like if I walk over to the door, it's me, then I'm at the door, and it's like almost like it's in your head that I walked to the door. It almost forces it to be like, there are moments I look back at comics and I'm like, how did they convey this? And I realized, oh, they didn't. I just imagined the space in between.
Do you want a really good study on doing that well?
Yes, of course.
Read Final Crisis.
All right, Final Crisis.
Grant Morrison's economical use of panels is such that if you are not paying attention, because he viscerally understands, and I think maybe thought about it a little deeper than we all had, and made me think about it a little deeper than we all had, what was really necessary to convey an idea. Because, I used to tell people, and I mean, I still do basically, that in a comic, technically speaking, you need 3 images to convey any idea. Because you need to establish the base, then move it, and then move it again. But if you study still imagery and advertising and things like that, a single image doing a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
You can break all these fucking walls down. And Grant Morrison is doing that masterfully in Final Crisis. When I read it monthly at the time, I remember kind of hating it because I was like, what the fuck is going on? And like, because I couldn't remember the single fucking panel that showed Wonder Woman doing a thing. Like, so then when I saw the payoff to that, I was like, what is this? When did that? Who's like, I was confused. But when I read it as a collection and I was able to really sit there and in one sitting, follow it. And it was similar with the Batman Rest in Peace, was really hard to appreciate, but incredible.
It's so funny.
If you read it in one sitting.
I'm going to have to read Final Crisis. I've read Infinite Crisis. It's funny you mentioned that too. Maybe I'll have to bump that up on my reading list, even though I have the massive pile, because
Morrison's just a really good writer to learn from. He's very smart, and he handles the medium very well. Not quite as comic booky as I suggest in terms of page turning and everything, but because he just kind of does what he wants to do. I like to play to the medium more. I think it's sort of. I think when you play to the medium more, it draws a light on the fact that the medium is great. And when you don't play to the medium, it draws a light on you being great. And like the medium is fucking great, and like it's such a great place to tell stories because it's so effective.
Yeah, you know, it's funny you mentioned that because you mentioned Final Crisis of All Comics because I may or may not be talking to the artist behind that book about coming on. So,
Oh yeah, okay.
yeah, JG Jones, which it was weird. I didn't really know. I mean, I met him at a bar at Heroes Con. I didn't really know his work, and then I was like, oh my god, like wait a minute. I just like Googled his name. I'm like, I know that image. I know that image. I know that image. I know that
Yeah, well,
image.
he did covers and I guess a few like small images. Doug Mank did a bunch of work in there that's amazing. There's this Superman Beyond thing. There's a 3D thing like where you can read it with 3D glasses. It's fucking insane. Drawn by Doug Mank. He's one of my
Oh
favorite.
yeah, yeah. His art's amazing.
Yeah.
So I wanted to take a step back because I one of the things I appreciate you say is the comics' greatest storytelling medium, which says a lot because your background. I mean, you have so much stuff. So honestly, the comic book industry needs people like you. I think that could have careers in tons of mediums, and you choose comics because you see the value in it, right? Like
Oh yeah,
versus there are people that do comics because as a stepping stone to others, and for you to step what a lot of people would see as I don't, but a lot of people see as down, you know, to comics, which even the way you're cringing at that is great.
No. Can I tell a story about this?
Yeah.
Because I really kind of have that story that I think illustrates this. I wrote a movie script for my brother Cody, and he broke my heart because I spent 3 months making this thing perfect, not perfect for me, perfect for him. I wrote it because I love him. I don't give a shit about movies. I don't want to be in the industry. I don't like the people. I don't like the culture. I don't like that everybody wants to be pretty. I like craftsmen. Mm-hmm. I like artists who spend time and study and learn things so that they can give us deep, rich, meaningful stories that'll teach us things along the way. You know, I want to be involved in a space where art is appreciated and craftspeople are appreciated. So I chose comics, but I wrote this movie for my brother because I love him, and it was, you know, when you're an indie filmmaker and he's won awards up the wazoo for films that he's made. There's a great movie called All That Remains that you can find, directed by Cody Blue Snider. It's based on a comic book that me and my buddy Steve Kurth had made. That pitched to Image Comics right before he got exclusive to Marvel, and it never got made. But my brother made it into a movie, won a ton of awards, went on to make another movie called Fool's Day, won a ton of awards. It's been called the greatest short film ever made. I think it probably is. It's fucking awesome. My brother Cody's super talented. Yeah, worth checking out. Cody's just brilliant. And Cody's gotten completely fucked by the Hollywood system for the past 10, 15 years. And then even more so in the last like 6 or 7 because he's a white guy. And basically he just got hung out to dry and ended up kind of moving on into other things. But along this process, I wrote a movie for him that was designed to be cheap. You know, there wasn't a lot of characters. It was juicy parts for the characters that were there. There wasn't a lot of sets. There wasn't a big sci-fi budget, but it was a little sci-fi. It was a little bit extra. It was a little something spectacular because he's like a Lord of the Rings type guy, and everything he always wanted to do was too big. So I shrunk something really big down to size that he could make for cheap. Like, and I just like, it was all mechanical for me. Like, it was just like, this is the job. Make a movie that your brother can fucking show everybody how fucking awesome he is, and like, you know, like, because you know, at the end of the day, the director and like he's the one who wants to be in Hollywood. I don't fucking give a shit about it. And he didn't read the script for like 2 years, and I got really upset with him, and I had told him at some point, I was like, Cody, dude, I wrote that script as a love letter to you, man. Like I was trying to show you how much I loved you by like writing something that I thought you would love, you would want to make. That would be the perfect thing for you. Dialogue the way you would want to hear it. The scenes broken down the way you would want to break them down. Not me. I tried to put myself, like, I tried to be you and write you a movie that you would like. And he went, well, look, man, I'm giving you an opportunity to get it, leg it out. You know, I'm one of the most sought after, you know, and he was very sought, all these different things. It was a great opportunity for me, I guess. But I wasn't seeing it like that. I don't fucking give a shit about Hollywood. Like I said, I don't give a shit about that. And he was like he didn't like believe me. I'm like, if I said that, and I go, dude, if I wanted to make movies, I would have fucking wanted to make movies. I'm like, I didn't make comics because I didn't think I was good enough to make anything else. I fucking made comics because I thought comics were the greatest fucking thing. It was the thing that I liked. It was the thing that I enjoyed reading. So I wanted to make fucking comic books. I love movies, but I don't fucking like movie people. And I don't like actors. And I don't like all these pretty people trying to be pretty and trying to fucking get one over on each other. I don't like those personalities. I like people who care about shit. I'm a toy guy. I like sculptors. I like artists. That's it, man. So for me, there is no Hollywood, even though I will create and direct that stuff. I will oversee that stuff. I will help them produce that stuff. And I'm going to end up making my own shit anyway on a lot of other fronts because I do love comedies and I want to see comedies be made. And I've been making comedy music videos with my band now. And I do think there's a future with me making some movies in the comedy front because I love comedy. And I just don't feel like enough of that is made. And I love doing comedy acting and, and I'm good at it. And I like doing it. But I don't like the auditioning process and I like all that shit's gross. For years I was going out as for commercial auditions when I was younger because I got an agent who wanted to send me out on stuff. But literally, you'd walk in the door, they'd look at you, and in an instance, I knew either I got the job or I didn't get the job. And I was like this rock and roll dude with long hair and whatever else, and I only fit so many things, so I very rarely got like commercial gigs. But voiceovers, I could be anything that I wanted to be. And I got into voiceovers after hosting, and that's been kind of the stuff because I make music. I've had a punk metal band when I was younger, and then I made a lot of music for behind the scenes for like film and television, and like ESPN. We would play a lot of my stuff on Monday Night Football or college football, and my band Dilf USA is now out and we're touring and building things and putting things out. But and the comics thing, I'm really focused on just doing what I'm here to do, music and comic books. And, and I do my podcast. I do Coolest Geek Alive on Wednesdays and Saturdays, which is just all about geek culture shit and kind of basically the mainstream taking over our culture and fucking it up. And then putting a highlight on the shit that I love and trying to draw people to that. But it's more of like a mainstream kind of geek culture show. It's all subversive because eventually I'm going to pull them all into comics, but cool. I want the biggest audience. So I'm generally just talking about the TV stuff and what from a perspective of somebody who actually knows, who actually read the source material, who has a perspective and has been studying and understanding, who buys the toys, who understands that they're fucking cannibalizing their merchandising market, that everything's fucking failing, everything's dying, they're fucking screwing the pooch. It's ridiculous. There's nothing that they can say to defend any of the things that are going on to somebody like me, who is an actual consumer of this stuff as well as a professional in the field. So it's just it's so silly where we've gone. But I've been making the comics and getting my publishing company Blacklight District Studios set right. We're doing these independent books right now. My book King of Kings and Fucking for Our Future are the two that we'll be going back and forth on for a minute. But there's a lot more to do, and my next step probably next year is going to be licensing a few things and and bringing on my best friend Aaron Sparrow to be our editor-in-chief and start to build a line that'll have a little bit more prominence in the industry, with some more name recognition to some of the properties that we have, to reinvigorate fans and some money behind what we're doing to promote the stuff and get it out. So I mean, for me, I have some people lined up to kind of help me with that, kind of thing. I'm hoping, if I impress them enough with the thing that we're doing now, but really I want to impress the fuck out of them. And I want to have my own money that I can put into this thing and not have to just be asking money of friends to get this thing off the ground, because it's, I've been doing this for forever. The only reason why I've never been anywhere long is because I get frustrated with how terribly everything's being done. And then I just kind of will always have sort of interest in me and what I'm doing because my work speaks for itself. And I go from one thing to another thing to another thing. And I've been doing good work, for people and often in very adverse conditions. I think, everything that I put out despite itself is all still good, despite so many of the things that were done to fuck them up. And oh my God, it's crazy. what happens in licensing when you're working with licensed books and you have to get approvals from people who don't fucking know shit about writing, or working with some of these editors who are wannabe writers and they just don't get it. I mean, it's such a process. And the big problem is there's no good shepherds. And I'm a good shepherd. I prefer being, behind the scenes of the things. I was always encouraged because I was D. Snider's son to like get out in front of them, go sing, and but like in hindsight, I would have been a producer. I mean, and I am anyway, and I would have been an editor. I would have got a job at Marvel, and I would have made great stuff, and I would have made sure that things were great. And an egoless person who knows how to write, but also knows how to fucking find talent, recognize people who can fucking write and can get out of their way, but also assist them, guide them a little bit, oh, there's a little extra thing here that you could do. That's the type of relationship with editorial that, is always needed. You need somebody who's paying attention and can be helpful, in the right way and not a barrier. And somebody who is caring enough about the shit that they're not going to go to lunch until they get that phone call from the printer person about that thing, because they know that if they go to lunch and they don't take care of this, it's going to get fucked up. And then, the book's not going to be as nice. And it's not going to be that perfect thing when people get it in their hands. And for me, it's like, it's an art form. A comic book is like a sculpture. Here it is in your hands, a 3D physical form of this thing. And I really, when you get a really great one, you cherish it. It's like, like I cherished my copy of fucking The Killing Joke.
Oh, yeah.
That beautiful prestige format, just perfect cover, and opened it up, and there it is.
My hardcover.
Brian Boland. Yeah. Oh my God. But I love that little one, that just, I've read that book so many times. Just Brian Boland's art is just so precise, and just, there's nothing better than just some beautiful wall-to-wall work of art that takes you on a journey, and and you could just take a glance at it and go, oh wow, that's Oz over there. That's the weird land that I get to go disappear into.
I got to read more of his work. I mean, because I haven't reread it, I don't think, in years, but even now I'm just like looking at it, and I'm just kind of in awe at how much detail and how pretty every single image in this book
Oh
is.
my God. He's just incredible. They've done a poster book for his work that my kids bought for me because they know I love his stuff. And it wasn't even like his best shit. He was doing some covers for Jeff Johns' Wally West Flash run, and covers of the villains. It was just like showcases of all these villains. And I want a poster book of that so bad. Mirror Master. And
yeah, we were just talking about that the other day, how Flash is some of the best villains.
Dude, these
I need to read some Wall. So you think Jeff Johns' Flash run is with Wall? Because I know he did obviously Barry and Wall. You think his Wally West run is?
I haven't read all of Mark Waid's, which lots of people swear by, but I've read
Mike Barron. I know was the first writer actually to write Wally West as Flash.
Yeah, I haven't read any Barron's. I've read chunks of Mark Waid's, and I don't love it. I love Jeff Johns. It's
this cover.
Yeah,
this is Boland. Oh, I love this cover.
Yeah, that's Boland.
This one too.
See the Captain Cold one. Yeah, that's one. See, I want to poster that. And then there's more. He did a series of these for the villains. Yeah, there's one. The whole team. That one's fucking.
See, I didn't know. Normally, it's weird. Normally, I'm a guy that prefers the main interior team to do the main cover, but then you'll get an artist like Brian Boland and covers like this, and it's like it's fine.
No, you know what? It was really cool here. I love this artist, the interior artist on the book here.
Collins.
What's his name? Yeah, Scott Collins.
Scott Collins.
Yeah, he's great, but he his style is a little more. I don't want to call it cartoony. It's very unique. His style. I love it, and it works really good. But it's not necessarily super grounded in reality. And there was something really cool about having these super grounded covers on top of these interiors that were a bit more kinetic. You know what I'm saying? Like even the colors. Look at the colors as soon as you switched over. The colors like inside the book were like bang. But on the cover, they were slightly muted and a little bit real. And then you'd open it up and there was like fuck, man. I mean, look at that team cover. That friggin' cover is so gorgeous. Murmur and freaking Plunder and Magenta and Weather Wizard and Mirror Master. Mirror Master's great.
Yeah.
If you haven't read, Grant Morrison is like he's one of the best studies of writers in comics. His Animal Man series it's like 3 trade paperbacks, unbelievable. It's like the greatest comics I've ever read in my life.
Yeah, I gotta just sit down. I gotta just take like a week or whatever and just read comics. I was reading some yesterday. I was reading some of those like the ones that weren't that great yesterday, but that's okay because it made me want to read good ones. You know, that's the thing. I think I never really regret reading something because if it's not good, at least I know I read it. I love this. This is Grant Morrison one.
Superman for All Seasons.
Oh no, All-Star Superman.
All-Star Superman.
Yeah, I love it.
I like the All-Star Superman. The first arc of it was a little boring for me, but the second arc with Luthor in prison with Parasite, I thought that shit was great.
Yeah, that was awesome. Now I do want to get into circling back because first of all, I want to touch on you mentioned comedy. You mentioned what are your favorite comedies?
Oh, I love comedy. You know, if you really want to be a good writer and a good songwriter, the best thing you can do for yourself is study comedy and comedic.
Really? How's that relate to music? I'm curious.
Comedic timing. You know, the way something is said, the way it's laid out, understanding that. My dad was really into comedy. And he kind of turned me on to comedy films at a really young age. And I was one of these kids like my son Grayson, who was kind of like, if dad says it's cool, I'm all about it. You know, like I'm in, you know. So I used to watch like half of a classic comedy movie every morning before school. I would wake up an extra hour. So I'd wake up like an hour and a half before I was supposed to go to school so I could watch a movie by myself. And then go to school. And I would watch the Marx Brothers, Mel Brooks, Monty Python, Blues Brothers, a VHS version of Animal House that my dad taped from the television, so there was no boobies in it.
Really, your dad?
Yeah.
You didn't want that?
Yeah, well, because he told me what a funny movie it was, and I kept saying I wanted to watch it, and he was like, yeah. I kept asking him, so he was like, I'll see if it shows up on TV, and if it shows up on TV, I'll record it for you, and then you can watch it. So that was the basis of my childhood. Monty Python, the Holy Grail, Life of Brian, Meaning of Life, Duck Soup, A Day at the Opera, A Day at the Races, A Night at the Opera. A million of the other ones, eventually, I had the DVDs, but it was like the ones that I could get a hold of that my dad had in his collection: Blazing Saddles, Spaceballs, The History of the World, Young Frankenstein. That's one of my favorites. Slapshot. I love fucking Slapshot. And then, that started a real love of just comedy in general. And comedians, and so many of these comedian actors, like Steve Martin movies or Eddie Murphy movies, and them as comedians. Steve Martin's comedy I love, and Eddie Murphy's comedy. And one of my favorites is Eddie Izzard. He's a cross-dresser comedian from Britain. He's fucking hysterical. But so many comedians. I love comedy, and I actually recently have started doing open mic nights, like not like promoting myself or anything, but I always wanted to do comedy as a child. Kind of had a bad experience with my dad because I was trying to make him laugh, and because I wanted to be, he liked funny things, and I wanted to be a funny thing that would make him laugh. And he kind of came down on me real hard about not being funny, and it really hurt my feelings at the time. And because I was constantly testing. And I was testing bad jokes because I think bad jokes are an intellectual thing. A bad joke intelligently laid down can be really funny, but it's hard. And I was testing things, and he hated bad jokes, and I would make bad jokes all the time, and on purpose. I was testing. I was trying to see if I could crack some of the terrible ones. And then he really hurt my feelings, and I never thought about doing comedy again for a long time. And recently, I realized, I always wanted to do that, and I bet I would probably be pretty good at it. And I'm doing all right.
That's good.
doing some open mics. So it's been fun, and I plan to continue doing it kind of just for myself because I've been writing material my whole life because I would come up with ideas and I just write them down on the side. But I really do believe it's the greatest thing I've ever done for myself. And there's so many comedians that are easy to impersonate because there's a certain song to the way they say things, and there's music to the way we speak. And some of the best songs that you will hear are a sung version of something that we say and we feel, and it's representing that thing, and it's even being said and sung in a similar way to how we would say it. And actually, the closer it is to how we might say it, the closer it resonates with us to the feeling, because we've said that, that feeling is there. So it really behooves us as writers to learn comedy. Like any good writer will tell you, the hardest things to write are horror and comedy, and for the same fucking reasons, because horror and comedy are essentially the same thing. They're just transposes of each other, but it's getting the shock, it's getting the surprise, it's really getting that surprise. One
Pacing,
enough to
timing.
make you laugh, or one enough to make you go, that's and pacing, timing, and when you're dealing with comic books, turn pages, and those studying the great thriller makers like Alfred Hitchcock is a great person to study if you're a filmmaker. You go and watch a movie like Rear Window, which is not working with the toolbox that a writer today would feel free to be suggesting and throwing out words and evocative things and making whatever thing going over the top. It's just a tense movie about a situation that you're feeling with this guy, and it's like slowly unfolding, and you're there the whole time. You're with it because it's not about it bleeding all over the place. It's about it meaning something, and you being able to connect your audience to the meaning, and then you just deepen that meaning and make the meaning that you've connected to. As long as you understand, I gotta hook them, and then once I hook them, I deepen the thing that I've hooked them with. Now we keep, here it is, deepen the hook, deepen the hook, deepen the hook. And and then eventually, you start satisfying those things, and hopefully you have other hooks in place if you're doing a longer story or whatever it might be. I personally, I love writing fucking short stories, and short stories, I think, are another thing that is really wonderful for new writers and people trying to figure things out in comics. Coming up, there was opportunities like the X-Men Unlimited. Is a book that they had where they would try out new writers. There was a Marvel Comics Presents, which I eventually got my way into.
That's what I was reading last night. Oh, you got into Marvel Comics Presents?
Yeah, that was my first thing. I did a Deadpool story with Marco Cicchetto. It was Marco Cicchetto's first work at Marvel, and it was mine. I'd written a Spider-Man Unlimited pitch because I found out who the editor was. And I wrote a really great story where basically the Spider-Man fights what he calls the Zoo Crew, and because it's just Rhino hanging out with Vulture and Grizzly, who I kind of changed Grizzly where he didn't talk very much. He lost his tongue or something like that, and I made him really nasty. It was really fun, and he was singing some funny song to them and whatnot. But the story all hinged on a double splash page of Spider-Man stuck between two buildings, holding the building up with his webbing because Rhino had taken out the foundation and the building was falling down, and he's holding the building with his body so that all the people can be saved. And that J. Jonah Jameson comes, and that he had lost his pants during the fight with Rhino. He lost his pants, and he's sitting there in his boxer shorts, and J. Jonah Jameson shows up and takes a picture. And the last page is like on the front page of the Daily Bugle.
That's awesome.
So it was just like this great little short with some great classic Spider-Man villains and a little hinge story. And I was really happy with it. I'm like, all right, cool, nailed it. Send it in, and I get an email back. Spider-Man Unlimited was canceled.
Oh.
I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, okay, shit. So somebody who I had met, Sotomayor, Chris Sotomayor, my colorist friend of mine, he clued me in to the fact that another editor that I knew had just been given a project called Marvel Comics Presents, where they were taking 8-page submissions for stories from new writers. And I went, bang. And I actually wrote this amazing story. It was based on something that I wrote when I was younger that I knew was good. I loved it. It was called Bottom Dollar. And it was about this person trying to pay for a drink with a dollar that had congratulations written all over it. It was that dollar that you get when you start a business and it's your first sale. He was paying with his first sale bill. And so I wrote it into a Spider-Man, kind of a story where basically this guy goes into this bar and he's sitting there, and right at the beginning of the story, this guy walks in behind him carrying this duffel bag and this cloak, and he sits down at the booth right next to the bar. And this guy tells his story about how they had a business, and his son ends up saving this woman who was being accosted by this street gang, and he ended up later getting hit in the head with a brick, was hospitalized for months. They couldn't afford the bills. They ended up having to basically send him and his family back to their home country. He sold the business, all these things, and now he's here all by himself, waiting, trying to figure out how he's going to get home. And the guy who's at the booth comes and drops a bag of money, and they don't see it initially. This black bag on the seat, and walks out. And they go, "What?" He says, "You dropped this or something like this. I think this is yours." And he opens up the bag, and there's all this money. And the guy goes running outside, and he's, Mister, what? How can I thank you? And you see in the sky the shape of an angel, and then it like peels away, and you hear a conversation going on, a very angry conversation. "Where's the money, Vulture? Where's all the money?" And the Vulture says, "I told you, I gave it away." And Spider-Man goes, "Yeah, right," and punches him in the face. And the last page is just a splash of him in the Spider-Man cocoon getting a tooth knocked out. And it said, "No good deed." And he wrote back to me and he was like, "I don't see any reason for the Vulture to ever do this. This isn't in his character in any way, shape, or form." They had just released a miniseries called Identity Disc, where they had literally had a story where the Vulture had to put together this team of villains because his niece had cancer and he needed to make enough money to save her. A story that had just recently showed that he was more than just a fucking vulture. He had a fucking heart. He could be gotten to. And the story, the sob story that was there was a good sob story. And he could steal some more money or whatever else. He felt powerful enough that he could go get more. It was a great story, and he turned it down. And I turned around. He said, "You could write something else, though. You could submit something else." So I literally turned a story around in 24 hours. And I said, "All right," because I was trying to win a fucking Eisner with every single thing I wrote. And that was me trying to win an Eisner. I was like, bang, short story about Spider-Man. It's not really about Spider-Man. It's going to fucking say something about people, and then he said no to that. So I went, "All right, if you don't like that, I'm just going to write the most ridiculous fucking action-packed, fun, in-your-face Deadpool story you've ever seen." And I handed in this thing where basically Deadpool's about to kill this guy, and his cell phone goes off and wakes up the dude, and it's Weasel. And basically, he ends up having to fight all the ninja bodyguards, and there's a little midget ninja bodyguard, and it hits him in the eye, and he's having a whole fun time with it. And then in the end, he kills the guy, and then he's like, "So what do you want, Weasel?" And Weasel's like, "They said they'll double your money if you bring him back alive." And he turns to this guy's girlfriend, who also woke up when the cell phone went off, and he goes, "Do you got any duct tape?" And that's my little 8-page Deadpool story. And that, a month later, they went, "Yeah, I'd like to buy it." And I was like, "You like to buy it? Okay."
That's good. That's good. I mean, it sucks that, that's where it went, but man, I wish these all went through. That's awesome. But that's how it is, I guess.
There was so many too, because there was like, I remember I'm trying to remember, there was a cool Cyclops story that was that I had that was meant for one of the X-Men Unlimited things, I think
I didn't know that's what X-Men Unlimited was. It was just new
X-Men
writers.
Unlimited was a place where they could try people out. It was like 11-page stories, and I had a story where he had to push a red button.
And like, what do you mean?
Cyclops
Yeah.
had to push a red button.
What was the button?
An important button. I don't remember, but it was red, and he can't see a red button.
Oh, okay.
He's looking through ruby lenses, so everything's red to him.
I forget about that because I never see it through his. I'd love to see a comic through his eyes.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like, so, like, I just thought it's so interesting what Cyclops is dealing with all the time. He's always seeing the world through this ruby lens. You know, like the only time I guess he even sees anything for real is when he takes off that thing, opens his eyes, and he's blasting things. I was like, that's a really interesting sort of thing to explore. And then I said, and what if there was a red button? Originally I had the idea for Daredevil, because I was like, what if the problem was you had to differentiate color? You know, what would he do? And like, and you know, I was all ready to go like investigate, you know, if there would be any change in the vibratory thing, depending on how it was, like, you know, to get into, is there anything that he could do to figure out the color of the thing? You know, if there was a bomb and all you got to do is hit the red button.
Yeah. There was an animated skit I saw of that where it was like Daredevil's like, all right, all you got to do is cut the red wire, and he's like, yeah, that's gonna be a problem for
that's gonna be a problem, you know. Yeah. So for me, I was like, oh, cool, let's do that, but like legit, let's like legit, like that's a legit problem. How do we get out of that shit? And like, you know, for me, a good writer is the one who can figure out a way out of that.
That's your comedy background too, like you see the humor in that, but there's also suspense in that too, I guess. Yeah.
So there was so many, and I mean, you know, the thing that I broke my heart that didn't go through at Marvel, I had a pitch for Blade to reintroduce Blade to the Marvel universe after the movies had been so successful. He had never been super successful in the comics, basically because he wasn't a science fiction vampire like he is in the movies. He was more of a magic-based kind of vampire. The science fiction vampirism thing introduced in the Blade movies was a great idea. And I really leaned into that in a pitch for the Blade thing. And they said it was one of the greatest pitches that they'd ever received, blah, blah, blah. They ended up waiting too fucking long to actually pitch it. They pitched it at a retreat. And then I was told that Victor Geschler had already been promised Blade a few months earlier. But I had given them this pitch essentially like 11 months ago, you know, right after the first retreat. So like my timing was right. Their timing was
off.
And I was like, "Fuck!" You know,
it's the tough part with putting your ideas in someone else's hands.
Well, it's hard because as much as you think you can control these things, like because I kept thinking, like, man, I'm going to pitch them things where it doesn't matter what my name is. The concept is so good. Like the title of my pitch was "Blade and the Daystalkers," and there was a quote that I wanted on the cover that said, "What sort of idiots stalk vampires at night?" Hannibal King. Because the original book was called Night Stalkers. It was Blade and the Night Stalkers. What sort of idiots stalk vampires at night? And the whole first issue was about Blade and the Daystalkers blowing up the safe houses where the vampires live, setting them on fire, so that all the vampires had to come out during the daylight and bursting into flames. They were just like, we're not playing fair anymore, motherfucker. And then there's like a major sort of repopulation of vampires made by this group, the Nosferati, who are based on Nosferatu. And there's this whole, I make sense of the whole thing of the master vampire power versus the lesser vampire power versus a character like Nosferatu and the more monstrous look. So we like tie it all together so that there was like a real sense to the whole series of the different types of vampires and the different types of powers that had been depicted in the Marvel universe and in vampire lore in general, because like it's like a next level thing when they're turning into mist and bats and shit, and that's not traditionally happening in the Blade, you know, films. But eventually you get that level of character, even though the third Blade movie sucks. But those first two Blade movies are awesome. And you know, we introduced a character like Whistler. His name was Hummer. And he was in a wheelchair. He was a mechanic, and he was just like sort of the same, similar kind of support character to play because we couldn't use Whistler. They couldn't use him. So that's what they needed to do. Here it is. They gave you a template for a thing that everybody's going to love. deliver that in fucking comic book form, and I was about to. I was going to turn the Ringmaster and the Circus of Crime into vampires.
Oh, I remember them. They were in like some of the earlier Spider-Man and Daredevil comics.
Yes,
right?
they're lame as fuck, but
Yeah.
if they were vampires, they would be fucking cool. And I literally went through the fucking dictionary of the villains, and I found a bunch of villains that were lame, but not if they were vampires. If they were vampires, they were cool.
That's why I like things like
And they were the
Suicide
first
Squad,
ones.
for example. Is you could take they would take lame villains and make them cool.
Yeah, well, sometimes you could just give a perspective on who they are that made them do the thing, that all of a sudden the thing that they do doesn't seem crazy, it seems apt. You know, it seems perfect for who they are. You know, of course that's the stupid name he picked and the whatever else, because he's that kind of guy. You know, even something as simple as a Count Vertigo. He's a count, you know, like you know, and like present, you know, the simple archetype of that thing, and to be Count Vertigo, you know, it gave depth to some of those sillier kind of characters that you might discount. But yeah, you know, and we were gonna do shit with like Hulk blood and different mutant blood, all the different blood, because you know, vampire, science fiction vampires. We're gonna make the werewolf science fiction. We were gonna tie all that shit into there. The pitch that we had going on, there was an eventual fucking Blade, Punisher, and there was a couple different great fucking crossover team up like bits that we had. It was so fucking ready for prime time, this pitch, and it was like 30 issues that I fucking pitched them with one fucking killer opening issue. And you know, I spent so much time on the things that I do. I don't fucking hand shit in to anybody unless I think it's done. You know, like, and then I will hand it in. You know, at least that was how I was back in the day. Nowadays, I actually do a lot of sort of channeled writing where like I don't spend too much time overthinking it. I will just sort of like jot down some of my pieces here, there, and you know, maybe organize them just a little bit. But I don't go nuts because like, you know, I have found that the best things tend to come out of me when I'm allowing it to, and I'm kind of trusting that I do know the way, and that I have had enough brilliant artists rub off on me that, you know, I know enough of their good ideas that there's always something adjacent, you know, that will be able to, you know, be there for me when I'm figuring things out. So more recently, like, you know, Fuck You for Our Future was really generally kind of written in like concept between me and my friend, and then just, you know, kind of executed for me to make him laugh.
That's dope, man. That's really cool. It's funny you say that, like waiting to hand things off until they're ready, because I mean I felt very similar, and it's always cool hearing these ideas. So I have a question. So you have all these ideas, right? All these ideas, and would you ever see them in any form? Because I imagine you probably don't want to go back to Marvel, right? You want to do your own thing.
You know, if one day they hit me up and said they wanted to do some things with me, there are, and if it was the right time, and if I was really allowed to do the things that I would like to do, I would absolutely go back, because there are some stories that I think I have in me just sitting there already, where it wouldn't be very hard to get them out of me, that would really be appealing to so many people who I love, because I know they're like me, and I know they would be appealing to me, and I would love to see them. And you know, there's a few things that I would like to do. But I mean, it really depends on a lot of things. I mean, at this point, it's so crazy what the whole system has become over there. You know, but it's unfortunate. You know, there's an audience just dying to be satisfied. There's so many great ways to do it. You know, like there's things that I'd like there's this thing that I came up with a little while ago, and I really want to write it, and like I thought about maybe writing it just as an independent series, but it's called The Watcher, and it's the Watchers from Marvel. They take a guy from Earth and they give him their powers, and they put him on the moon, and they put him in charge of watching these evil children from around the galaxy who are destined to be despots.
and he is in charge of nurturing them into something better. And they keep escaping, and he has to take them on a lot of field trips and shit. And, and basically it's like all of these, some of them are getting too big for the classroom, and it's like all these little baby future Hitlers who, have been taken away from their parents who are trying to get them back. And the Watchers are like, no. If we give them to you, they're going to grow up to kill people and be awful, awful people. We need them to be better. And like, there's just something about that nature versus nurture story that I find very appealing. And the single dad sort of character as well that I find very appealing, a bumbling kind of guy put in charge of a bunch of asshole children. Who are, some of them are really smart and some of them are really strong and they all have powers. And ultimately he ends up with like a super team of super kids that he's trying to teach how to be good.
That's a really cool concept.
So like, I would love to do that for Marvel and have each one of these babies be a race of being from the Marvel Universe's cosmology. Have one of them be fucking Kang the Conqueror, baby Kang, and it would be so good. One of them be Igora, the baby planet, and she keeps getting bigger and bigger. Like it's just like there's just a lot of fucking fun things to do with something like that. So there's some, and like that's the type of thing that I know that I could probably do at any time there that would be fun to do. But at the same time, I could just fucking do that myself. There's a lot.
That's what I mean. Yeah, there's ideas that like I've thought of where it's like change. I mean, how many great characters were originally ideas for something else that they transferred to their own stuff or something new?
Well, exactly. And I mean, I literally, like, I just took from Merc Publishing, there was a spring special, there was a Death Rage story. I had a really fun Deadpool Easter special that I had pitched. And I kept coming up with all these ideas where I knew the book would sell with or without me. And I started pitching them on Deadpool holiday specials. And I knew that they would fucking sell, and they were great fucking ideas, but they don't fucking know what's good for them. So like it's like it was so aggravating. It's like it would be ridiculous, like because they weren't like a part of the marketing department essentially. So like they weren't thinking marketing wise, like this will sell, like this is like an easy freaking thing to do. I would love to do my fucking Deadpool Christmas special.
That sounds fun.
The Deadpool Christmas special opens with Santa Claus up at the North Pole and he's checking his list.
Mm-hmm.
And he finally gets down to Wade Wilson. And he looks over and it says, naughty, 25 consecutive years. And Santa goes, oh my. And he pulls open this dusty scroll on his desk. And it has a list of punishment for naughtiness. There's year 1, a lump of coal. Year 2, 2 lumps. Year 3, 3 lumps. There's a pile of coal, bag of coal, vomits, comets vomit, and reindeer droppings, and like all these things. And then towards the end of the list, at number 23, it says, warning of your impending doom. And finally, at 25 consecutive years, it says, death. And there's this moment in the book where at the beginning where Mrs. Claus says, Santa, dinner's ready, and he says, I'm checking my list, woman. And she says, you already checked your list, honey. He says, well, I'm checking it twice. and he throws on all this machine guns and this ammo, and he yells, I'm going out. Gets on the sleigh and then cuts over to Deadpool, and he's just like, minding his own business. And fucking Santa shows up and starts trying to kill him. And he starts trying to save Santa. He starts trying to get on the nice list by doing nice things. At the time, Deadpool could body slide. He could teleport anywhere he wanted to go.
Yeah.
They took that power away from him at some point because some fucking writer was lazy. And so he stopped being able to body slide, but it was a great part of his character. It just made him that much more aggravating and annoying. It's his personality that fucks him up. It's not the other people. They don't need to fuck him up. He can fuck himself up. Like the body slide thing was great. So he would body slide and he would find an old lady and he'd help her across the street. And then Santa would show up on his fucking sleigh and he would throw the lady across the street and she'd be like, I broke my hip. And he's like, fuck. Like, he's like, it's getting worse. He keeps trying to do nice things. He's picking up garbage. He's going to get on the nice list. And finally, he teleports to the North Pole and he takes Mrs. Claus hostage. And Santa comes in and she has a heart attack in his arms and dies.
Oh
and
my
Santa
God.
rushes across the room and hugs him. Thank God. How could I ever repay you? And he becomes Santa's helper. So that Santa never has to get his hands dirty again. He will now be the person who will go off on Santa's behalf when someone's been naughty 25 consecutive years in a row. And then I was going to do a follow-up issue next year where he goes to kill Dr. Doom because he's been naughty for a long time.
Oh, that would be so good. And here's the thing. That works with Deadpool, right? But that's an idea that can also work on its. You do that with the original character. You could do that with so many characters. Just because how many characters could you do the naughty list? It's a great idea. I think there's got to be something you could use that for.
Well, eventually, it's just like the amount of, like, as a songwriter, I'm literally sitting on 3,000 of some of the greatest things I've ever heard, like that I just haven't been able to fucking make.
Yeah, I was during this podcast. I've written down ideas.
It gets to the fast thing, but this is thousands of ideas in here, and it just keeps going and going and going, and I remember lots of them reasonably, as long as I get on a line of thinking about the thing. And some of them are written down in one capacity or another. I went through at a certain point and I took out the things that I liked the best as like overall ideas that I was like, I could do that on my own. Like I had a thing called Achilles that I wrote when they took Barbara Gordon out of the chair. Mm-hmm. I was really upset about that. And I pitched Marvel and I said, DC's just made a fucking huge mistake taking Barbara out of the chair. It was great representation. There isn't any like that, that really matters. Mm-hmm. Maybe this could work. And I pitched him this book, Achilles, which was about this guy who was basically just like the perfect guy, the guy that you love to hate. You want to punch him in the face. He's handsome. He's just like everything. He's got everything going for him. And essentially, he gets his back broken by this creature known as Olympus, which is this golem made by his illegitimate father that he doesn't quite know about, who's Zeus or whatever. I guess it was Zeus. And he did this because he didn't want this kid to fucking upstage him. Mm-hmm. But the first issue basically ends with him getting his back broken and him being asked, so what are you gonna do now? And he goes, what do you mean? The same thing I've been doing. Save the world. And he's using his upper body strength and occasionally having to throw his fucking pee bag and, climb. His kryptonite is stairs, and he has to fucking scale the side of the building with his freaking hands. And, and everything is more difficult for him. And it's kind of embarrassing sometimes. And the real cool villains try to make it hard on him in that way. But he won't stop that. And the miniseries ended. So stupid. It was so stupid. I'm going to tell you what the fucking editors said when they got back to me. And the miniseries ended with Reed Richards, Tony Stark, and Hank Pym presenting this guy with these legs that would help him to do whatever. He could do whatever. And they're in a hospital, and there's a window looking into the center where people are being rehabilitated. And he says, them first. And they go, I don't think you understand this technology. No one could afford it. He was like, well, then I can't afford it either. So, when every one of them is walking around in something like that, I'll do it too.
Oh my God.
But until then, I'm okay. And that was going to be the introduction to this character. And they told me that I embarrassed
some of their main characters. That was embarrassing. That end scene was embarrassing for their characters. They wouldn't do that, and that basically they didn't see any place for it. I pitched DC on it too. I tied it into the Wonder Woman mythology and repackaged it more specifically.
Which, first of all, she needs expansion in her mythology and consistent mythology. Like, if there's one character I'd first choice, honestly, I'd take Wonder Woman because I feel like she's one of the big three, right?
They call her the big three, but she's completely untapped.
But they don't do it. She is one of the most brilliant characters they have, and
nobody
her
has been
potential
able
is squandered
to figure her out because of the invisible plane thing. The invisible plane thing really threw a weird loop in the thing, and then there's a lot of weird things. There's the guy who created her, and he created her as like a fucking S&M figure, and she's bound. She's got freaking chains on her. Like her real true going back to her ideation is a little weird. And then there's been some people who have played off of her being made of clay and some of the cool, more mythological parts of the thing. And I think that is more what needs to be leaned into in a greater way, in a more interesting way. And I think a lot of the people who have played in Wonder Woman's Fieldhouse, and this is largely because of DC and the type of creators that they tend to hire, have drawn a very stilted mythology that is not as fun and exciting as mythology can be.
Yeah.
Mythology
I think
can be
they also
super
rely
fun.
too much on mythology for Wonder Woman in the sense they're pulling from all this other stuff, and she has her super villains. I read the whatever was the post Infinite Crisis series, where the 1 year later, I read that. Actually, even though I read it for Gail Simone's run, my favorite arc was, I think, one of those first arcs where it was all of her villains teaming up against her. Because I was like, I like her villains, and then they sidelined all of her villains. They're never there for her entire run. And I'm like, well, I want to see Cheetah. They keep changing her backstory. They keep changing all of her villains consistently.
It's a problem with Deadpool too. Joe Kelly built a really good foundation of what that character is. The movie delivered that foundation. I don't know if they've brought it back to that, but when they left, Chris Priest just kind of did whatever he wanted. He was funny enough and a good enough writer to do whatever he wanted, and his run was great. But after that, Gail Simone, Jimmy Palmiotti, a ton of others, none of them could quite get that book back to what it was because they weren't sure what the foundation should be, and they weren't willing to go back to what Joe had started with because Chris Priest walked away from that. And really, they needed to go back to that. They needed to go back to Blind Al. They needed as his sidekick. That was a very anchoring sort of thing, Blind Al for him. And they needed to go back to him pursuing, trying to be a better person despite being a complete Muppet. And he's just he's a living Muppet is really what I say about Deadpool, why he works so well. I love that character. There was a Halloween special that was these midgets are being trained by Taskmaster in the individual disciplines of the Avengers to attack Deadpool at his house on Halloween. Famously, Deadpool is known throughout the neighborhood as being a very dangerous house to go on Halloween, so all of the kids in the neighborhood stay away.
Mm-hmm.
These Avengers don't know that. So they come against this house of horrors and basically end up getting ensnared and trapped and whatever else by these things. And we know, the audience knows that these are assassins. They're not trick-or-treaters. They're actually midgets, all this stuff. And Deadpool's playing it off like he doesn't know. But he hired these people because kids stopped coming to his house on Halloween. So, what was I going to do? So, but ends with him basically telling them oh, and here's your, how much do I owe you again for doing this? So here you go for you. Come back next Halloween. And we did a President's Day special where he was hired to kill the president, and the White House goes on high alert, and then you find out that he was hired to kill the president of the Hair Club for Men, and it just ends with him killing that guy, and that's it. False alarm. Come down from on high. Deadpool's been hired to kill the president of the Hair Club for Men. But those things were funny and would have sold and would have been fun. And like, I love Deadpool. I love writing him. And if they would have let me do it, and I mean, and I wrote Deadpool team up. There were so many fucking good pitches and so many things. And it's all fucking politicking and bullshit and right place and right time. And, you know, your friends, even when you had friends, like they don't really have that much power. They can only help you so much. It's you know, I at the end of my run, before I finally left comics, like mainstream comics, I had Scott Snider at his peak and Michael Martz, who was one of the higher up editors who eventually left and formed Aftershock Comics. Both of them trying to get me into DC. Trying to get both. We're going to get you in there, Jess. And again, years were going by.
Oh, man.
And I'm just like, what am I supposed? As an ADHD sufferer, what am I supposed to do with this? Because this feels like death. Just waiting for things, and so instead I write more things, I do more things, I pitch more things. And at this point, you know, I'm 41 years old, or I'll be 42. I've written a lot of stuff, and it's good. I'm good at what I do. You know, I really think that the thing that ruins most artists is ego and damaging experiences, you know, that changes them. And you know, I went through my damaging experience phase, but I immediately went through a repairing myself from that shit phase so that I could be useful as a man who's gotten through shit in his life. Because, you know, I really think the best writers, like, look at somebody like Gene Roddenberry. You know, Gene Roddenberry was a police officer?
No.
Do you know that so many of the people who were big writers of the old guard writers, they started off as police officers, and once they retired, they would go into television writing because they had a lot of experience, and people would hire them because they actually knew the law, they actually knew procedure, and they could base all of the stuff on their real world knowledge. They hear how people talk. They've met gangbangers and characters who are on drugs and all this stuff. They actually know stuff. Those writers are amazing. And, you know, the early Gene Roddenberry shit is like fucking TJ Hooker and things like that. You know, police procedurals, essentially. And those writers were coming like that's, you know, I'd imagine those people, if they can fucking put a pen to a paper, could probably write pretty good.
Absolutely. That's good. There's so much I want to go into, and we don't even have enough time, but this has been great hearing all these ideas. First of all, I mean, eventually we're not there yet. Get issue 1 out and get my first arc. I think after this, I had a plan for stuff I was going to do, and now I feel inspired to write, honestly. So I think we're going to do that. But, you know, I'd love to eventually, just even with this, get hire writers to flesh out. But even then, just reading your stories in general would be great. But I mean, that wheelchair idea, that's great. I mean, these are all ideas. I think you could flesh out any universe really with this stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's so much, and it's sort of like there's like things like for the right time and the right place, like to do them. You know, it's, you know, for me, it's all about, well, is there an audience? How do I actually get an audience, you know, to these things? You know, doing Fucking for Our Future is all about just getting an audience. You know, hey guys, titties. You know, does that make you happy? Like, help me get enough fucking clicks on this thing that fucking Kickstarter puts it on their main page a little bit, like they've been doing. And like, you know, and I didn't make this like just some, you know, it's not just titties. You know, for me, it was like, again, you know, you have to lean into the genre in every way, shape, or form. You know, it's beautiful. It's a celebration of the female form, even though there's actually no nudity in the book.
Oh, there isn't?
No, it's a power armor.
Oh, okay.
That's a power armor, which the boobs expand and like all the things because it's been made to attract the men. There is actually, I'm sorry, there is some nudity in the book, but it's the men, the 3-legged men who are like these Bigfoot creatures who live in the wilderness. And they write it into their DNA that there'll be no more penis envy. And every man's penis generation will be slightly larger than the previous generations, and thus eliminating penis envy. But now some of the men's penises have gotten so long that they've had to move into the oceans and now roam the oceans in renewed peace.
How did you, because this is a wild idea. How do you, because you were pitching all this stuff, which tame in comparison. How did you come to this idea?
I was working for a company called Merck Publishing. They were making $67,000 from like 800 or 600 backers on every campaign. They were treating their creative people terribly, and treating their staff terribly. My buddy Aaron was working for them. That's how I got brought in the first place. They had told me I was going to get 10% ownership in the thing that I did for them. Then it got brought down to 5%. It was just like, it's just ridiculous shenanigans. And then they put out this book called Jankies that they thought was like the height of fucking their artistry, which was just a titty book about a Velma and Daphne insert. And they made like $100,000 in a day. Wow. And I went, fuck these guys. If somebody does not start playing the game the way they're playing the game, they are going to be the new controllers of the comic book industry.
Right.
And not while I'm fucking here. They will not. So I'm like, two can play at this game. I hate the nudity on the covers, but I really only hate it because of the way it affects the story. If I could do something where the nudity was built into the story, I'd feel better about it. So that was the beginning of it. And then I had this, Fucking for Our Future really kind of wrote itself. The idea that, what if you needed us and we weren't there anymore? Like there's this thing in feminism of like, we don't need them men, and I was like, all right, let's give the women what they want, and let's kind of, give the men ultimately what I think really they want in lieu, because I think so much society and stuff comes from making space for your women. Let me make a nice place for the person I love. It's these sort of romantic relationships that lead to nesting and creating a world for each other. And the men not being interested in the women anymore, they go celibate. And there's something that happens when people will go on sex fasts and whatnot. And it's been like, studied to some degree here or there. And people get smarter. The men get smarter. They have all this extra energy to their brains, and they're thinking about other things. Their minds aren't focused on sex anymore. There's a lot of things to think about. So the men crack open their genetic code, and they actually create themselves as these Bigfoot type creatures who are built to go live on the land and have a nice life, eating fruit in the jungles, and got a nice coat of fur so that they're cool, and they're asexually reproducing. They don't need the women to be a part of it anymore. And they're just off on their own, having a nice quiet life in the wilderness. And I think that is a lot of the man's nature, the more masculine nature. I want to have a quiet life in the wilderness. And the women have their utopian society of all women. But what they find is that there's plenty of masculine women, and masculine women are basically men. And, it's one of the last lines of the comic book, that it ends on, like this narration. I'll pull it up for myself because it's like worth sharing. The princess who, is this, our character sort of commenting on so much of this life and the way men and women and then, breaking up and whatnot. This whole thing, she's writing in her diary, and she says, ancient stories tell tale of a great nothing, a god of stillness and rest, which gave birth to an endless everything, and a god of creation and celebration, everything from nothing, give and take, male and female, according to the ancient books. The foremothers of Old Glon never appreciated being depicted as takers, I can tell you that. New Glon was founded on the idea that women were the true givers, a title it was time to take back. Growing up in a matriarchal utopia, I've had plenty of opportunities to witness feminine generosity, but I've also seen an equal amount of the opposite. This may come as a surprise, but some girls are more like boys, and the rest of us, well, we give as good as we take. And the we give as good as we take will make sense when you read the book. But these concepts are really explored very artfully and in lots of fun ways, and ways that'll make you think along the way of, because and it's not really heavy-handed. It just is sort of present within the idea. Like, as the idea unfolded, it just kind of all worked out. And it worked out in ways that I really liked. Like these men, like, okay, well, they're going to be like animals. Like, so it's barely like having nude men in the book. And this power armor, it's a power armor. It's not even a girl. It's a robot. It's a sex robot. And my main character is never going to be portrayed nude and it's never going to be sexualized. And the power armor is sexualized to the audience, but inside the books, there's no sexualization. The men aren't interested in sex. The women aren't interested in sex. They have a need for the sperm, but it's just a scientific need because their race is going to go extinct. So it's really like the most incredible thing that I've ever made, really, just in how many problems I managed to sort of solve for me about doing it. And I'm so proud of it because it's so subversive on that level, because at a glance, it looks like the most in-your-face version of the typical thing.
That's when when you first sent it to me, I was like, oh, that's what it looks like. And I think that's why, some people might not know, but it's hearing it. It's just the way you talk about it. It sells it.
Well, it's I can't do anything half-assed. So, every single time I get to the plate, it's still that attitude of I'm trying to win an Eisner. And I'm never going to win an Eisner because I don't fucking play the stupid games that you have to play in this fucking industry to win an Eisner. And I'm sure nobody ever fucking confronts me about anything, but I'm sure quietly people don't appreciate the things that I say out loud because I'm right. And that's the biggest freaking problem. And the reality, though, is this is a great book about men and women, about sex. It's a great comedy book. I actually think it's actually good medicine. Somebody had said something about, trigger warning for people who've been raped and stuff. And I was like, no, man, this shit is chicken soup for the soul for that. It's a non-sexual book about sex. It breaks it down to its silliness. Boobs, big boobs, little boobs, boobs that climb on rocks. Like, it's just fucking silly shit that we think is attracting the person and making a thing. And it's just boiling it down to all of the superficial parts of what it is. Because what it is much deeper than this silliness, the silly parts of sex. Real sex is real connection with people and heart and soul and love and giving and reciprocal thing. And that's intimate. And this is just silliness. This is a scientific need for a thing, and basically it's a Roadrunner cartoon. So the woman is Wile E. Coyote, and the Bigfoot men, they are the Roadrunners. They don't want sex. She's never going to get it, and it's just going to be one bit of calamity after another as she tries to get the sex from the men who don't want the sex. 1,000 years ago, they wanted the sex. Now it's over. So, that's the thing. It's a cautionary tale of the sexes. Hey, we should have solved that sooner. And then along the way, there's so many deeper little bits of whatever, because, I just can't help myself. So there's a whole world being freaking built in my mind now that'll slowly be getting introduced. And even though, initially I thought maybe we would just do one issue of this and I do, just a couple fun things to introduce some ideas, but there's just too many fun ideas to do, and me and my buddy want to do some more. So so we're already working on issue 2 and whatnot.
That's
but
awesome.
It'll really be easy if we can actually make some bread here, because honestly, to pay us at our page rate, we need to make at least $15,000. Like, if I'm going to get paid what I get paid per page to write a comic book, what he gets paid to draw a comic book page, like at Marvel or whatever, like, to just get paid like we would normally get paid and make the book, make all this stuff, print it, send it out to everybody, we need to make $15,000.
Mm-hmm.
Especially after all the little fees that we got to pay, and it's like it really, and like anything more than that becomes the point in time when it's like, wow, it was so worth doing this. And and it's not like, well, we can build on this success, which is going to be the thing if we end at 15,000, or whatever, so it's like, it really, anybody who can help us get the word out, about Blacklight District Studios, everything we're trying to do, this book, I'm trying to keep all of my friends and their families fed. I know so many talented people who I adore, people who won't work at the big companies for one reason or another, who are freaking amazing, and people who do work at those companies and are being screwed around by them on a regular basis and not treated fairly and whatever else. And I'm friendly with all of these fucking pros, and I've got great relationships with artists, especially. Every artist who's ever worked with me has wanted to work with me again. I'm a people pleaser, so like I like people, I love artists, I appreciate people, I'm very encouraging, and I'm a good writer, and I try to write to my artists to help them and write to the people that I work with, and it's always appreciated. So that thing has been able to like go for me for forever. So the moment I am set up a little easier to continue to do this stuff, going to be a lot more than just me, even in the writing stage of the game. We did the book for Mythic Legion Studios, and Mythic Legions is the action figures, the fantasy action figures that Four Horsemen Studios makes.
Yeah, I know.
So the Mythic Legions action figures, we did their first art book, and we hired Greg Weisman to come in and write the story. Greg Weisman is
one of my biggest influences.
Oh man, Greg Weisman's brilliant. We love Greg. Greg's a good friend of mine and Aaron's, and on the creative side of things, I mean, he and I don't hang out a lot, but as a creative person, I adore him. He knows it, and we like to get him to work together, and he will work with us again in the future. So I'm really trying to set that thing up for an animated series, because that's what would help their action figure line the most. Animation is a really big thing for selling toys, so I would really like to help them do that. And the foundations in the comics, the same way Masters of the Universe did it, is a good way to start. So we've been trying to help them do that. And I didn't write that. I creative directed it. And that doesn't mean I was super heavy-handed with Mr. Greg Weisman, but I did ask if we could frame it in a certain way, which he was down to do. So it's framed, kind of accordingly, so that we could get the right hooks and introduce the right ideas to begin to build a feeling of a universe, in that comic. But there are so many brilliant people like Will Pfeiffer, Keith Champagne, great writers.
I think Will Pfeiffer is the one that wrote that Wonder Woman story, actually, that I mentioned. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, that you liked? He's great. So. If you've never read his Dial H for Hero, that was awesome. He did like 32 issues or something like that of Dial H for Hero. It was an excellent run of the book. And then he did a short run on Aquaman called Sub Diego. Was very memorable, very short-lived. They kept like redoing Aquaman. They didn't give him enough time. It was great. Really, really great. It was drawn by Patrick Gleason too.
Awesome. Yeah.
And Keith Champagne. There's so many people who I've like seen along the way that like brilliant. You're brilliant. I've only read a few of their things, but enough to know they kill. And they haven't been able to get a lot of work. They haven't been able to get a foothold the way that they could be. And there's just so many people like that. And I just want to take all of us off the fucking streets, man. Because it's just the way these companies use their creative people. The music industry does similar shit. The movie industry, all of these industries, they just take you for whatever you're fucking worth, and and then discard you when they're done. And they don't like to promote you. They don't like to make you a big star. I was saying the other day, the only reason why Jeff Johns got to be a name was because he left for Marvel and wrote the Avengers. And all of a sudden DC went, hey, not
come back, yeah.
Come back. We respect you, because they were like letting him fucking. They weren't giving him really good opportunities, and he was doing great work for them. And like really, he was the best talent they had working at the company. And just it took a while before they really like respected him and started actually doing anything with him. And I saw that time and time again with the talent. So it's like so obvious to me why we don't have nice things, why it's not like not better than it could be. But it's there's not much to be done about it. Being in the system to change the system. The system doesn't. You don't change the system changes you. And it's really just unfortunate. You have to create new systems and have those new systems be so awesome and be working so well that you inspire the people around you to join your system or do like your system does. Be more like your system. And that's really the thing. It's like when a new business model comes along, like Netflix, and they're sending out these DVDs in the mail, and Blockbuster Video is not doing that. Blockbuster, if they had started sending out the DVDs in the mail sooner, they might not have been destroyed like they were.
Right.
And that
You have to adapt.
Yeah, they didn't adapt very quickly, and it was a big criticism at the time that they really waited too long to try to do that, because when they were really desperate at the end, they were like, okay, we'll try to do the same thing, and it was too late.
Yeah,
so that sort of thinking will really fuck up everyone.
Yeah, no, I'm in total agreement. I mean, and I love what you've got going. This book looks great, and even just in general, I'm excited for you to do more. It seems, but before we even think about the next idea, or all the other stuff we do, and I think you've got all the right ideas for the independent comic scene. I definitely think we should keep in contact. This all looks great. I mean, this book, you could get it for $6 or $9, man. I mean, why not?
The PDF is just $6 or $9. It's $6 for the one with the non-nude covers, and it's $9 if you want to see the nude cover one. And it's $10 for the physical book. So I mean, and that's it's the quality of the book is going to be gorgeous. I'm trying to pull up right now for you the other thing. I'm going to show you real quick before we wrap things up. The previous book that we did is King of Kings, which is religious figures in a battle of the bands to determine the reigning religious ideology of the day. And it's a little bit of a send up to Life of Brian for me. I'll send you the link right here so you can pull this up we have the back stock. I'm putting it in the comments right now, and I'm putting it in the private chat for you, Vaughn. If you could pull this up real quick and just scroll down the page. This is the back stock of King of Kings, and a pre-order right now for a reprint of Blacklight District 6 issues, #1, which is the music comic book that we did first. That came out from Image Comics 6 years ago, and there's 6 songs that we did 6 short comic books to. That's it right there, with our cover by Chris Burnham and Andrew Dahlhaus.
Andrew Dahlhaus is amazing.
Yeah, this is like a short run pre-order that we're doing for the book for the book right now. That we're offering it. It's out of print or whatever else. And then King of Kings, this is what was left over from our last campaign. We only just put up the store. There's not a lot. I think maybe there's probably 150 copies of the book total left over or whatever. But the main cover and everything, it's all the same prices to be respectful, to the to all the people who bought into the Kickstarter, of course. And the premise is it's completely blasphemous if you're very sensitive to religious topics. But the first page is a warning page that says, look, our intention isn't to insult anybody and hurt anybody's feelings. We're coming at this from a place of love. We love everybody, and we think that there's all sorts of walks of life in the world. There's a lot of different ideas about religion. And the whole point of the book for me was to depict as many different ideas about religion as possible on a equal playing field to Catholicism. Because Catholicism has always just been sort of the #1. King of Kings is this title. Jesus has won it every year for every century, every century for many centuries, because he's got God on his side. And God basically saves him no matter what happens. So what's that? God saving is making it easy for you. He's a spoiled kid. He's a spoiled rich kid. He's been given everything, which is how Jesus comes off when crusaders go up to the places that believe in the Norse religion and literally force them at knife point and shit to convert to Catholicism, which is what has happened during the Crusades all over the planet. People in Jesus' name have forced other people to do things, which is fucking insane. Jesus would never do that. But there's some dicky version of Jesus that exists in people's mind, and that is our Christ. So it's I love Yahweh myself, But I'm, this isn't Yahweh. This is that fake Christ guy that they got. And, but it's the Jewish religions depicted, and the Muslim religions depicted, and the Taoists and the Buddhists and Luciferians and Scientologists and Mormons and some of the African world religions and nature religions, the worship of Mother Earth. I mean, it's all in our book. And by the end of it, it's a 4-issue miniseries. We have not completed the 4th issue, even though it's written. The first 3 issues are all drawn. And I divorce and near bankruptcy and a whole bunch of different things. So I lost a whole bunch of gigs that I was using to pay for these things. And I wasn't in a position to promote them or put them out because this wasn't done and so many other things. So I got into a real bad spot where I just got stuck for a moment. But the 4th issue, it goes some next level behind the scenes, little stuff of like religion, and people who are scholars and stuff will recognize various little subtle things that are being done and being said. It's really, really fun, really funny, and loaded with parody songs, and parody musicians, parody wrestling bits. It's just a real mishmash of so many things that people will recognize, done in really funny and charming ways. The first issue was super well received. We made like 6,000 or 7,000 on that campaign, but part of that was I had one friend of mine who put in $2,000 or something like that.
Wow.
So I had like a good friend who was like, "Hey, you go, buddy." It has to be a larger group. And ours is growing. We've got like 280 on the fucking for our future campaign right now. We had, I think it was less than 200 on King of Kings. I think it was like 108 or something like that, maybe, or 138. So it's like, we're going up, and it's just this smaller bit, getting it going. And every little bit helps, coming on your show or anybody's show, like, everybody who gets involved and picks up a book, that's it. We're off to the races if we can just, get the people behind what we're doing. And people are going to be thrilled with the shit that we have in store and the things that we'd like to do. And I mean, I have a plan to save, mainstream comics, to basically usurp mainstream comics with a new world outside your window approach that I think will be very effective. And very eye-catching and ear-catching, and I'm going to bring in the right people to do it. I'm not going to be handling it all myself. I'll be shepherding it, making sure that it gets done right, but doing something on a larger scale, as like a ghost machine or whatever, that I think will actually really matter to people, and I think people will be way more likely to engage with than they are to just another Marvel universe or just another DC universe, but written by these guys or written by these guys. I think conceptually we need to change the world that all of these things are being set in order to make it a little bit more interesting to all of our proclivities. And ultimately that really goes with looking at what the world really is and basing things on what the world really is, and putting some heroes into that place and seeing what that looks like. And, there's a lot of cool ways to do it in ways that will just be freeing and cool and can still stay childlike and uplifting and positive, but will bring forth and to light real world things that you should know about the structure of your fucking universe. Like freaking New York, Marvel Universe, New York is not the world outside our window.
Right.
So there's a way, I think, to get a little bit closer to that. And, and that's my plan in the future. But before I can even do that, I want to establish my company. I'm establishing it first with really great quality, independent things that are uniquely original. A music comic book project, fucking religious figures in a battle of the bands, fucking for our future. The shit that we're doing is outside of the box and crazy. It's heavy metal on acid, and it's stuff that's designed to show you that we're not thinking like everybody else is thinking, and we're trying to offer you something new. And then we're going to do the license books because we need the IP to help get eyes on our company, and doing a good job on things that people already love and appreciate helps to ingratiate you to the audience that much more. So, I want to ingratiate myself to the audience by helping to make some great things out of some awesome stuff that's sitting there. Nobody's doing anything with. We could do something with this. This would be great. People would be so happy. So, I don't want to talk about any of those things. I don't want to end up in a fucking bidding war going after any of the things I'm trying to license. But I have the things that I know are going to be the right picks for me. And I have great people lined up who I know I want to work with to get them done and make them awesome. And I know everything that I'm going to make is fucking awesome, because everything I make is fucking awesome. I mean, I'm excited. My first book is when my fucking intro book that I made as a little kid was damn good. I hired Chris Cross, and I got another guy named Nate Lovett, who was lower on the totem pole of artists, and I was able to pay him a little less. But Nate's art was serviceable. He was consistent, and it was a kid's book thing that I was drawing, and he did a good job on it. And Chris Cross did a great job on this Reckless thing. And that was what I gave out to people. It wasn't an ash can, it was a full-size book. And half of it was 6 pages of this Chris Cross Reckless story. And the other half was 6 pages of this kid story called Dodge the Death Ray and Really Awesome Man. And, and I just handed that out to a lot of different, editors and people at the time. And ultimately that was the beginning of me getting work. And when I go back and I look at it now, I mean, would I change a little thing here, there, or whatever? Or is there, do I think I framed it as good as I could? No, not necessarily. But I can see it next to so many different things that are out. And I still know it's good. It's still enjoyable. It could have been better. I could have made it a little better. But it's good. And, both of the things are good. There's a good joke. There's a good premise. There's good whatever. It was a good sell of my skill. And, I've just been doing it more and more and more and more. And I never stop doing it. There's so many things that I've written that have never been published and just sitting in my freaking inbox, and people have never seen, and even pitches and scripts that I've lost at this point. I don't fucking have them anymore. It doesn't even matter. That are good. They're really good. As people would have loved to have read them. They're like really great stories. It's like arbitrary reasons why for some reason they didn't come out. Like there's this amazing Jughead story that I wrote for Archie, which is so fucking great. And a good story to end on. But this guy who was young at Archie, he saw me across the way and saw how I was talking to people and basically saw that I was a cool guy. And he heard or he told me that basically the edict at Archie was they wanted to elevate the cool level, because they were a little passé, on some level. And they wanted to kind of get somebody who was an actual kind of modern day cool person. And they said, and you really kind of fit that bill. You're really, really kind and friendly and outgoing. You're similar to the character, I think, in a lot of ways. Do you have any interest in working on it? And I was like, well, that's interesting. And it was a nice compliment, being like, I pitched that. And I pitched them like a few different things. I ended up doing this story about him falling in love with this enormous burger called Enorma Burger. He's in love with it, though, so he won't eat it because then it would be gone. Mm-hmm. And now he's locked himself away in his bedroom. He's not eating. He's emaciated. He's losing all this weight, and the burger's rotting. And it ends up concluding with this bit of Archie comes to see him, and I barely remember, his dog runs in and snatches the burger from its perch where he has it. It's idle, and runs away, and it's racing after. No, Norma! And it's just this bit of him being obsessed to his own detriment with this hamburger. And it was really fucking funny. I don't remember any more of the bits besides the dog eventually snatching it up and destroying her, and him being starved and emaciated after a few weeks. But I guess it began with him going on roller coasters with it and going to amusement parks. They're doing all these things together. Yeah. But then he won't leave his room. He's been locked in there for a week. Mm-hmm. He won't eat anything else. That would be cheating on her.
Just the burger?
Yeah, the burger.
That's
him
wonderful.
And the burger. We're in love.
That's so
Can't
good.
take her away from me, man. I just wanted to take his love of food to the next level.
Extreme.
Next level. He loves food, right? He's never loved food like he's loved Enorma.
That's
Enorma
so
burger.
good.
And then you want to know why I don't even have this fucking script, because I had a computer crash and whatnot. And I reached out to the company. They didn't send it back to me. I got involved in a pissing contest between a lower executive editor and a higher executive editor.
This guy was trying to come up and demonstrate how great he was. He brought me in. I did great work. This motherfucker wanted to shit on his thing. They ended up not even paying me for it. They told me it was a fucking, what do you call it? When you do like an audition work, like it was a, what do you call that? On spec. I was like, on spec? Motherfucker, I've written for Marvel, DC, fucking Disney, Pixar, the fucking Muppets. I'm like, I don't fucking write anything on spec. Are you fucking kidding me? Write on spec, read on spec, motherfucker. I'll send you a PDF of any of the things that I've done professionally for any person. If you'd like to hire me, hire me. If you're not willing to do that, I will write you a pitch. Once you've approved the fucking pitch and you make me go to the script stage and you negotiate a page rate with me, we are involved in me being hired to write a comic book for you.
Yeah.
So they stiffed me for that fucking book, and I lost the damn scripts along the way. It was a great script too. It was one of my favorites because most of the things that I had written at that point were not straight comedy, and that was just straight comedy. And I was, and actually that was like one of the things that really reinvigorated me with comedy, and just like how, because comedy was like my first love. And I grew into all sorts of other loves, science fiction and action and Star Trek and, like whatever other things, role-playing games. I was a big Riffs guy. I used to play Riffs and, Heroes Unlimited and a little D&D here and there and stuff like that, and then I was also an athlete and, I like to play sports and, and I like to make music, and I was in bands and writing songs and learning that, so I had a lot of interests. And I was always just trying to like expand and grow my mind and be useful, essentially, because as this child of a rock star, I felt small. I felt like I didn't matter. I felt like he mattered. He was a big deal, and I was little, and I didn't matter. And I was really desperate from a young age to demonstrate the value that I held within me, and it turned me into a real overachiever who I just kind of never stopped working on things. So, even at 40, which isn't really that fucking old, I've done a lot of things, despite even the fact that the mainstream hasn't let me do as much shit as I would have been doing if they would have just given me the green light at any point. There's so many things that would have and could have continued wonderfully if not for one stupid reason or another. Down to Toy Story, like the fucking Boom lost that license. And I mean, we had plenty of we could have made an awesome Toy Story series for forever. Man, like if that thing was left to its own devices and me and Aaron were just left to go, Toy Story fans would have just adored us and deified us alongside every other person responsible for the Toy Story shit. Just because of the loving send up to those people that we're doing, how you love somebody when they're fucking giving you the thing that isn't like, it's not them, it's that thing that you already knew you liked, and they're like, oh, you're giving me that thing I like, that's the thing I like, and you're giving it to me. The thing I like isn't you. People have to, eventually people will come to like you, and you being you will be something they'll be happy about. But at first, when you're trying to write and communicate and put on a show and whatever, it's really about bringing something familiar to people so that you can say to them, I understand. I'm a big T-shirt guy, because for me, every T-shirt is me saying something. This says I'm a fucking Muppet fan, and it also says I like music.
Yeah.
And it says I have a sense of humor. There's a lot of subtlety through this imagery, and I really believe in this this polarized and crazy world that we live in, where everybody has a different idea about sort of religion, even if that's no religion at all. It behooves us to use non-religious imagery and ideas to bring us together.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just there's no prejudice to Gandalf in the Lord of the Rings. The Catholic man isn't like, he's the devil, What if he's fucking little boys? Like that's not being accused of him, because he's not. He's a representation of an idea of a certain amount of perfection that was necessary to save the world in this instance.
Yes.
Right? And that, as this purity, that's something we all understand. Captain America, I know what that means. Superman, I know what that means. Batman, I know what that means. Punisher, criminals know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
People know what it means. It's a simple image, and it's non-denominational. There's no Christ isn't my Lord, you son of a gun. There's no debate about it.
You know, that people have accepted Thor not as a true god, but as
Right.
a fictional idea of a thing. And you know, and that's enough of a thing that we can agree on for middle ground and conversation. And so I really believe that our culture, and it stems from us, the people who buy novels and buy comic books and support science fiction writers and these different things, because all this great stuff comes, these ideas come out from these places, and they grow. And the films and the TV are largely always based on these wonderful people who took the time to really lovingly make something great. You know, even some great science fiction movie or whatever that isn't have the title of the science fiction thing that it's based on, it stole all their good ideas, you know, and it wrote its own thing. You know, that's happening all the time. Everything is essentially a continuation of the genre and building of the thing. Star Wars is fucking, you know, John Carter from Mars, and there's so many other examples of different things.
Oh yeah,
major,
everything is.
Yeah, major influences for some of these things that you think are a completely original idea. I mean, nothing's really a completely original idea. I mean, to some degree, this is like as kind of like as close.
Yeah, this is pretty close
to it. You know, like the stupid fucking for our future thing. I'm like, I don't even know how I fucking came up with it, kind of thing on some level. Just and it was, but it came from a need for a thing, you know. So like, it's very rare that really happens.
Mm-hmm.
You know, mostly it's about building from the other things, taking that classic cop whodunit, but adding a new twist that makes it new.
Mm-hmm.
Or making the cop who's investigating that case a really truly unique character that's way more interesting and fun to watch investigate the case. You know, bringing something new to something that people already know that they love. And you know, and on some level, you know, fucking for our future is still that, in that it is treated as a simple science fiction concept, just executed as such. What if there was a real need for men and women to come together, and men and women were no longer interested in each other, and it was literally like, you know, it was a real difficulty to make that happen? You know, how would they overcome? How would they reconnect? How would they be able to overcome this new barrier they created? You know, that's a thing. You know, and science fiction's always being created like that. Everything's always being created like that. You know, that's why they say there's no new ideas under the sun. And I mean, really, there's not. You know, so just, you know, study as many of the great ideas and the great minds and the great people as you can. And then you'll just have a lot of things to work with, and you'll be able to see all of the shades and degrees of all the different ways to do all the things. I mean, that's really just for people out there who want to make great shit, study great people.
Study the masters that came before you is one of the things that I'm doing. Yeah. You know, even just reading is, I go, oh, I can't read because I have to write. And it's like, well, this is in a way, it's feeding that. So,
yeah. Well, you got to do, I cut myself off from reading comics and monthly. I wish that I didn't. I went into like poverty for the first time in 2008. And at the time I wasn't reading the comics fast enough because I started working everywhere I went. Instead of reading comics in like my spare time, I would fucking get my laptop out and I would do some work. And it made me miserable. It like ruined my life, cutting my fucking hobbies out of my life. And now I'm like reading a little bit of Lord of the Rings, a few pages at a time, and, you know, getting some of that back in your life. It's important. It's important to pepper your universe with, you know, some reading, some things that you enjoy, like, you know, and get into it. It's so fucking easy once you get like into the flow, and it's so rewarding and gratifying. And I've always been so grateful to the people who have provided me with the stories and the films and the TV shows and the comedy that has inspired me and made me happy and made me feel like I wasn't alone. And that's what I wanted to be a part of. I want to be a part of helping other people to feel like they're not alone, saying the things that need to be said that haven't been said yet, that make people go, yeah, somebody gets it. You know, that for me, you know, even like doing my podcast is very much that. You know, I'm trying to be the guy saying the things that you are hoping somebody's going to say. You know, I've been waiting for somebody to say, this situation in nerd culture is unfortunate. Everybody's fighting and it's gotten really ugly, and I hate it. You know, I love everybody. There's so many of these creators who I really appreciate their work, and I don't like how they're treating people, but I still like their work and appreciate them as people on another level because I knew them before this started happening, but I don't really necessarily approve of this, and I feel like I'm in the middle of it, and I really like, you know, so to be able to talk frankly, you know, to geeks and be like, you know,
I'm sure you're hearing this and hearing that. Don't play into that, and respond with this and tell them Jesse said this and told you that that's not really fucking true. And all of this stuff is very nuanced, and it keeps getting boiled down to these stupid fucking talking points, the same way it does in the mainstream society and their politics. And like everything going on in politics right now is all fucking corrupt and awful. And I know it because it's the same thing that happened in comics,
comics and entertainment in general.
Yeah. I watched it happen in entertainment, and then it happened in the political sphere in the exact same way with Trump. And, I'm not Trump's biggest fucking fan at all, but oh man, everything that they're doing is all the things that they did to the Star Wars fans. It's all the things that they do to the Doctor Who fans or the Marvel fans who don't like this thing or that.
Yeah.
It's just all them covering their asses by deflecting to some sort of attack position and accusing the other people essentially of doing what they're doing in lots of cases. And it's really just, it's awful, and for me, I am a very liberal person. I want everybody to have the freedom to do whatever they want to do. I want everybody to be happy, man. But that does not include my liberal friends who say, stop the Republicans from doing anything they want to do. No, the Republicans should be able to do whatever the fuck they want to do too.
Yeah.
I don't want to fight them. I don't want to fucking force their arm. It's like you don't force people to think the way you think. That's why we have art. That's why we have discussion. That's why we have communication. I am anti-establishment, but I'm not fucking, I don't want a civil war. This shit's ridiculous. So, it just really behooves us all to put our prejudices aside and try to come back together and focus on the things that we like. And, and that's me. I'm just trying to focus on the art that I love and bring that back to the forefront and get back to distracting ourselves with things that will grow our souls in one way or another, whether through joy or understanding. And I think my company has done that every single time we've gone to bat. And if you go back into, you go on Comic Vine or whatever, you can find every comic book I've ever worked on.
I was looking at that.
There's a lot of cool stuff. I mean, Vaughn, I'm going to make a PDF list of some things, and I'm going to actually just start giving it out to some people so that people can read my thing. Because it's hard to find that Deadpool story. And, it's a little easier to find my Hulk one shot because they put it in a graphic novel for Savage Hulk. Volume 2, I think it's in.
Oh yeah, I'd love to read some of your stuff. I mean, I'm already sold on your ideas, but it's
really
cool.
You dig it. I really appreciate the affirmations from you, and I totally agree with the cut of your jib. Appreciate a younger guy fucking reading and studying. I really appreciate you going, ooh, I got to add that to my list. Ooh,
my list is, but I got to take the time to read it instead of just saying that. But
I had a musician reach out to me the other day, and he kept apologizing to me because he kept stopping, and he was saying, what does that word mean? And I would explain to him what the word meant, and then we'd move on, and he would stop me again. And he was like, I'm really sorry about that. I'm an idiot. And I said, no. I said, most people don't
just pretend
they don't
pretend
they
know.
Like they know, and they never learn. I always ask if I don't know a word or I don't know what, then I don't know who's that. No, what did they?
Yeah, do? I'd rather if I'm annoying, then I'm sorry, but I'd rather be honest about it.
You be honest, and now you know.
Yeah.
Right now I've learned. You catch a man a fish and he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish and he never starves again. That's the simplicity of if I can learn what you're saying. The biggest thing when you're going down rabbit holes and learning about information, whether it's in science or whatever it might be, trying to find out conspiracies, whatever, keywords. A keyword can change your fucking life. You hear some term and you don't know what it means, go fucking look into what that means. It might mean something very interesting. There's words are rabbit holes, and learning and understanding what a word means can really be an insane experience. Studying the English language will teach you a lot about everything that's going on here in the world, because the English language is a very tricky beast. And it was done that way on purpose, because the people who designed it understood what the human soul was like and its negativity and things that were difficult for it, things that made it more difficult to function in harmony, things like time, things like degrees, some things good, better, best. Oh no, it's only good. It's not better or best. It's my birthday. If it's not my birthday, I put all my excitement on my birthday. I'm only excited on the birthday. Let's put it here in that word. Let's put our power here in that word. Let's put our power in that's mine. And things aren't ours. Things of possession. There's a whole bunch of tricky things about the English language when you compare the English language to other languages. Features
that we have that other languages don't have those features because they're very unnatural to us. So our English language has a ton of unnatural features that makes the communication difficult. But really studying English is interesting. And once you really understand the language better, you become kind of a little bit of a magician and like a wordsmith, because language is spells. And there's so much programmed into every word, and knowing what is programmed to words, knowing that fucking will get a reaction, obviously.
Yeah, that did. It did. I was like, whoa, what,
Yeah.
but it does. And then you take the time to explain it, but it catches your attention. And I'm looking forward to reading the book.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on the show, brother. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, you're welcome back anytime. It's always, you got this enthusiasm, and you're always talking about something that's interesting, and I love that. And there's so much we didn't even get to, but that's fine, because I learned so much I didn't know. I learned all these stories I would have never known that would have never existed, unfortunately. But yeah, I'd love to have you on again. This has been great. What's the best way for people to keep up with you?
Well, I'm on Twitter fairly actively now. I'm Coolest Geek JBS. And I'm actually on Instagram too. I have like all my old toy pictures I used to take pictures at an action figure city. I had the biggest collection of 6-inch scale characters probably anywhere on the planet for a while. And my toys burned down. But I used to do photos in there, just crossing over characters and just tons of little fun still images. And if you go onto Instagram and you go far down and you're a toy guy like me, you might enjoy that. But yeah, that's kind of the best way to get at me. If you go over to the Blacklight District Studios, BLDST.com, you can sign up for the sort of notifications thing for all the stuff we do. I'll put it in the bit, and I mean that's really a good way to do it, so that you can actually get on the teat and help us make some bread, because we need to sell our wares and get the word out. I mean, really, they're locking everybody down on social media. The best thing that everybody can do for us is share things directly. If you know anybody who would really fucking dig the stuff that we're doing, literally just be like, yo, Bob, check this shit out. You'll love it. And I will appreciate you forever, for doing that. And if you're somebody who's got some extra bread to spend, we've got some higher level things of up to getting drawn into the book as the friggin' last president of Glon, and executive producer credit, where you're just giving us a bunch of money to help us make the money that we need to fucking get this ball rolling and really be able to, get out from under the thumb. Because I'm not going away. This is what I'm doing. It's just it's either how fast I'm gonna be able to fucking get it done, or how slow, depending on how much money we make on these things. Because it's just, that's the business I want to build, and it's way beyond that. My fucking plans are quite expansive, because I see possibilities, and I just want to create a space where there's a lot of opportunity for people to make money, feed their families, and the world is filled with a lot of great art. So please, go to BLDSTS.com and sign up for the notifications there, and follow me on Twitter. I'm Coolest Geek JBS.
Sounds good. All right, guys, you heard the man. So make sure you do all that. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a blast. And of course, as I head out, I'm going to get to work on some stuff. I'm sure you are too. Make sure that we check out the trailer for my upcoming comic book, and make sure you take a look at it as we head out. And if you aren't already, subscribe to the channel and check out my past interviews. I just did 2 really cool ones yesterday, and look forward to the future ones. And if you haven't liked this video yet, make sure you do so. Thank you guys so much. Follow Jesse, follow me, and I'll be seeing you guys next time. Peace out and have a good one. When the whole world was dragged into World War III, brave men like my father fought on the front lines. And they weren't alone. That was 20 years ago. Now it's up to us to carry on their legacy. And every so often, the earth from which we come gives way for something new. Something greater to be born, and with them, even greater threats to face. Bring it on!
Phenomenova. For you, Dad. For you.